1994, Democrat Senator, beginning to notice a pattern here, Dennis D. Consini introduces the assault weapons ban of 1994, banning semi-auto rifles with certain cosmetic features that resemble full-auto military rifles. This unconstitutional color of law was passed in September of 1994 and signed by the first Democrat hippie philanderer, Bill Clinton, the same day. By the time it went into effect on January 1st, the number of firearms in private hands nearly doubled. It was primarily this latter fact alone that caused the leftists, the Democrats, the Marxists, the hippies, and their international backers backing them, quite a bit of overlap there, to realize now was not the time and Willie Clinton was not the man to execute the next step. In 2004, the assault weapons ban sunsetted despite several attempts by the usual suspects to keep it on the books. There is no doubt in my mind this was a result of pushback against the Marxist writing on the wall. Here we are in 2015. Former New York mayor, billionaire, and subversive insurrectionist Michael Bloomberg is now spending millions of dollars in various states sponsoring initiative legislation to expand the background check requirements of the Brady Handgun Violence Prevention Act to every private transfer of a firearm between two people, even for purposes of inspection or tryout at a range. He and his cronies like Bill Gates have already spent $10 million counting the voters of Washington state into passing this initiative, and the state of Colorado already has it, and now he's getting the usual Marxist Democrat legislators in Arizona, Nevada, Maine, and other states to introduce it as voter initiatives. This is not only an assault on the Second, Fourth, Fifth, and 10th Amendment guaranteed rights, it's an assault on the entire rule of law. The Washington state law was so poorly written, the Washington Attorney General notified the law enforcement agencies of the state he had no way to provide any guidance on how to enforce it. The law enforcement agencies announced they were not going to enforce it. Law enforcement agencies cannot establish policies for their officers to follow that are in violation of law. Therefore, whether an officer enforces this draconian, stupid, leftist violation of our Constitution or not is entirely up to the political agenda of the individual officer. The rule of man, the very principle our nation was founded to abolish in favor of the rule of law. Police officers are not supposed to have a political agenda beyond the rule of law, or at least they're not supposed to enforce according to it. The Brady Act and the subversive insurrectionists backing it, and now doubling down on it, have succeeded in creating a fundamental constitutional crisis we are going to have to deal with. I foresee some real turmoil in our future, and I foresee the Marxist elements of our society taking extreme advantage of the turmoil they are creating. It's a simple fact of life. Government cannot subjugate an armed citizenry by force. That's why we have the right to keep and bear arms in the first place. That's why we must not ever tolerate attempts to eviscerate it, regardless of the source, regardless of whatever wonderful sounding reasons offered for it as to why it's necessary. Under our constitutional form of government, no one has the authority to pass laws violating the constitutionally guaranteed rights of the citizens. Not the Congress, not the executive, not the judiciary, not the president, not the state governments, not the UN, not the people by foolish initiatives, not by anyone. It must not be allowed. You must vote anything down like this, the background checks for firearms. Vote it down every time because they'll come after you for freedom of speech next. Overview. The bankster cartels were 13 years late regaining economic control over their colonies, and now they are 15 years late officially regaining political control. But with this first enemy agent infesting the office of President of the United States, they seem to have pretty well achieved de facto political control already. We just swept a Republican majority into the previously Democrat-controlled Senate on their promise of putting a stop to this coup against our Constitution. Their inaction makes me wonder what juicy skeletons the National Security Agency monitoring of their communications, telephone calls, emails, etc., has revealed about them to the Marxist mafia taking us over. Are they responding to blackmail? Now he's back in the saddle and proceeding with his Marxist-style governance by decree, regardless of constitutional prohibitions on his actions, and so far at least, regardless of a court injunction stopping his amnesty plans. We will have to wait and see how that turns out, but as far as I'm concerned, he must be impeached, and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law for insurrection against the Constitution of the United States. Surely there are 12 Democrats in the Senate with the integrity to join with the Republicans to convict him. Alas, I see little evidence of it. Conclusion. This timeline to the Bolshevik insurrection would not be complete without offering a method to restore constitutional government and the personal individual liberties our Constitution protects. It's actually pretty simple, perfectly legal under our Constitution, but it won't be easy. Our Constitution created a federalist government with sovereignty shared between the states and the federal government. The states and the people have not only the right but the duty to keep the federal government in its constitutional box. The first thing that needs to be done is for the states to declare the 17th Amendment to be unratified. It's easy. It's a matter of public record that at least 10 states withheld their consent to being deprived of their suffrage in the Senate. Thus, under Article 5 of the U.S. Constitution, the 17th Amendment was never ratified. Concurrently, the state needs to recall the current senators illegally chosen by popular election instead of lawfully by the state legislature and fire them. The state legislature then needs to choose 2 new senators and send them to Washington to fill the seats of the recalled senators. If the recalled senators are trustworthy and willing to take direction from the state legislature instead of the people, the same ones could be chosen to go back on probation. The Senate leadership might refuse to seat the properly chosen senators, but that would be settled pretty quickly because the state has a constitutional right to suffrage in the Senate. Besides, a whole lot of other states would probably follow suit very fast. The federal government would probably immediately withhold funds from the state. That's okay, because the next thing the state does is declare the 16th Amendment unratified because too many states rewrote it first and pretended to ratify something that had not been properly proposed. State sovereignty is a wonderful thing. State sovereignty can get us out of this mess. So then the state collects the income taxes the federal government would have collected from businesses and corporations and the like, not from the people, because that's illegal under the Constitution. Deducts its operating expenses and awaits a bill from the federal government for its share of the constitutional expenses of the federal government. That's the way the Constitution says to do it in the first place. Such a bill would necessarily be about 5% of the amount normally collected from the people of a given state. I can't think of a faster way to restore constitutional government to the United States of America. It might result in some pretty tumultuous events at the federal level, but in any attempt by the feds to force the issue onto the states by military means would be grounds for the arrest of federal officers ordering military involvement. The states are sovereign. If we are to put the federal government back into its constitutional box, the states have to start acting like it. Thanks for watching, and Semper Fidelis.